Alright, so by default, all shapes come with UVs, except for I've taken the liberty to go in and destroy the UVs on all these objects. Window UV texture editor. You'll see that there's nothing here. What I'm going to do is apply this texture to this without UVs. So here, I'm going to go into the actual, let's rename this material so I can reference it as I lecture. I'll call it UV test. So now that renames it down here, and I don't have to have Hypershade open all the time. So if I need to assign that material, I could just right click, assign an existing material, and it's called UV test. As you can see, it just turns white. In the UV texture editor window, we could see this new texture. I want to dim the image. That way I can see the UVs as I process them. Okay, so we're going to look at projections first. Okay, projections is the very core of UVs. To look at this, we first look at planar mapping. And I'll use camera for the demonstration. So camera, in a nutshell, is if I took a picture of this object at this angle right here, you can see that the UV layout for this is on an angle. And I can adjust this by clicking and dragging. And it would look to me that, things are kind of, I don't know, misshapen in a bit. You can see that these lines start going at an angle. Okay? If I did it at this angle, you can see that over here we have this shape appearing. Okay? And this shape is at an angle. And this is on an angle because of the camera. Well, it would stand to reason that if I take this UV, so over here I can right click and go to UV, and I move it around, it's also going to move the texture. Okay. If I straighten out the UVs, if I bring them all the way to the edge, it straightens out the image. Okay. Now you notice there's a lot of numbers here, so they're really easy to read and they're very high res. Okay. What if I did this? What if I shrunk this down to something more like this? You notice now that the numbers are very blurry. They lack detail whatsoever. It is because the more you use this space, the more detailed it becomes. But if you put an object so small in here, you start losing detail. Let's look at moving around UVs just for a simple thing. I often skip this part because it's just so, it's kind of taken in that you can move them around okay. But let's look at just very basic stuff. Let's look at the fact that maybe these two UVs need to be straightened. Here, I have this UV border edge straightener. Okay. Bam. Let's see, I have this one off and that one off. And you can quickly go in and straighten out everything. Now you can start moving UVs as two at a time. Just like that. So now it's a little bit straighter. Now notice how the UVs for a square are now rectangles. This is a bad sign. This tells me that the UVs don't represent the shape quite well. Also, fundamental rules of moving UVs. If I click this button, I have the ability to squash UVs. Kind of hard to squash a square though. Shell tool is very handy in the fact that I could just move the entire shell without grabbing it like this. This one's not very useful right now, but I have the ability to unfold or relax UVs just by clicking and dragging here. This one gives me the ability to move it around based upon kind of the artesian way of moving things within Maya. It's a click drag will basically smudge it. If I use B on the keyboard, I can make this brush bigger, and now I can just take my brush and kind of move it around. I don't really use this one very often at all, so I wouldn't even be able to explain it if I tried. The select shortest edge path. I'm guessing that you need to select an edge in this case, and I'd be wrong. But these 3 or 4 are very useful. Not that there's no usefulness, I just never used it, so therefore I'm not going to try to say that I have. Okay, another thing you could do is UVs. You could flip these. That's very handy sometimes. I'll show you why. You can flip them this way also. You can rotate them. These tools I'll have to cover when we get into more complex shapes. This one unfolds. Not very useful here, but again, complex shape. So for the rest of these tools, I'm going to cover later on. Okay, so first off, let's look at a way that we can make these UVs square and easy to read. If I just jump into my top camera, create planar map, you'll find that it automatically lays it out perfectly on the 0 to 1 UV quadrant. And that's what this one is 0 to 1. And you can see that by going in here. Here's 0 and here's 1. And that's how it reads. So this would be 0 to -1, 0 to -1. So -0 to -1, and etc. and so forth. Now, we could use the rest of these, but traditionally we don't do that because only certain programs understand the full range of UVs. Not all programs know that. So I like to keep students on the mat, I call it. Okay. So within this class, we're going to basically stay on the mat, and maybe later on we'll get off the mat just to show you advanced stuff. All right, if we look back here, you can see that it lines up perfectly. So that's very fundamental rules of UVs. Next, let's cover some more advanced stuff as we figure out how to project based upon automatics, cylindricals, and etc. and so forth in the next video.